Yes, no, I think like before we get started, let me briefly introduce Rohan. Rohan's been a partner with us in our journey at Social Beat, and a lot of the success we've had with our brands is thanks to Rohan and the team working with him. I think to give some background, Rohan's been working with brands across the sectors, but has really worked with some of the leading D2C brands today to grow them, as well as e-commerce platforms. His wife also runs an e-commerce venture, so fully deep in e-commerce. So really great to have you as part of this D2C Leadership Summit, Rohan.
Thank you so much, Sunil, for such a great introduction. I mean, I won't just take all the credit. It's been a village, I think, and it's not just the two of us. It's a larger team sitting behind Google and in Social Beat together, working across creatives, performance, campaign, everything together, and then at the client's end to make magic happen. I think without a village alone, we can only do so much, I guess, and that's always something that I believe in.
Definitely, Rohan. So I think, would you like to share some of the things we discussed, and then we can move to Q&A after that.
Sure, I'll present my screen if that's okay, Sunil. Perfect. This is very weird. I've never come across this issue. Tech company, I guess. Driving online sales with YouTube. So what I'll be covering in the next half an hour is I think this topic people have discussed it, and I think in the earlier sessions also this was discussed a lot, that video is the next big thing with COVID coming in, and Nielsen reports telling us that video is now a habit. I think you guys heard that in Tanveer's session, and then just the last session with Ruchi from I think Meta. Again, video can drive performance and branding both, right? So I'll talk more about that with a few case studies, with a few examples, with a few numbers, and probably then I'll also leave everyone in the room with a framework as to how to incorporate video in the full funnel of your marketing campaigns, which you can use across multiple categories. You can move to the next slide. So innovation and growth for the D2C brand really starts with, if you just go on page, it starts with identifying search behavior. It starts with identifying your audience and viewership, and it starts with understanding what is the part to purchase for your products, right? A D2C brand is slightly different from an online standpoint when, let's say, you look at a traditional brand. A traditional brand would mostly have an offline presence, right? Their products would mostly be on the shelves. They would sometimes have a store, right? So for them, it's easy to get eyeballs of the end user who they want to convert, right? But let's say for a new D2C brand, they have to understand what is it that their core TG it's doing online, right? So that's where the search behavior comes in, understanding that, right? Understanding what is it that they're doing at what stage of the funnel. What are they watching on YouTube? What is their TG and demographics? And then understanding how much of touch points are required, or how many touch points do they go before executing the purchase in the category that, let's say, D2C brand functions in, right? So we'll try to figure out these three things. But just moving on, a little bit about YouTube and what it has grown to now. YouTube is now 450 million plus behemoth. We continue to be the number 1.5x the reach of the largest GEC in the top 6 metros. 1.3 times the reach of the largest GEC in HSM, and number 2 network in all the regional states. So YouTube's growing, and thanks to COVID and thanks to the new internet users, the Bharat that's coming online, I think it's just a matter of few months, or maybe some of I can quote it, but probably we should see the 500 million number soon, if not sooner than later. Then let's just talk a little bit about the consumer, how the consumer has evolved. Consumers are interested in buying locally and with smaller businesses more than one. That's what we're seeing. I mean, if you heard from Tanveer in his session, right? There was a 500% increment in interest for D2C brands, and that's what it is in the year-end search report of Google, right? That suddenly a lot of first-time shoppers have come online, a lot of users who are searching for D2C brands have come online, and this has been catapulted further with COVID coming in, a lot of people are expecting packages at home. So the D2C thing has also exploded, and that is where we see that a lot of consumer interest is changing. So if you see over here that 62% of the active population express favorability towards buying goods, right, that are produced in the country. So there is a thought about made in love with India, right? A lot of brands, a lot of websites are showing that, and this is made in India, this is made in this part of India. Let's say this is something that's made in Gujarat or South India or East India, right? So all that is really becoming a trend now. People are proud to talk about that they make products in India, and make in India is something that's even getting a lot of push from the government itself. And SMB is not just, let's say, your mamas and moms cos of the world. We are also looking at SMBs that are really, really small, but because of the technology we have and the ad platforms we have today, even they are able to get a voice from an online standpoint, right? It's easy to go online now. It is easy to put your shop online. It is easy to market yourself online, and that's what makes it so much more powerful in a digital era for you to have a share of the pie online. And if you like go slightly ahead, Tej, there was a Nielsen survey about what would be the impact in video behavior, right, with COVID coming in. And what we saw was that because people are now homebound, there would be a growth of about 60% in video viewers, right, globally. And I think that number, as per the recent report, went up to 85% as per that Nielsen report. So it's just crazy how much growth video has gotten globally from a consumption standpoint. And the most interesting bit about this is that in India, like especially, if you look at the graph in the next slide, you can just move, perfect. Consumers are turning to YouTube with their questions and trying to figure out solutions to their questions in more of a video format, right? The trend in how-to queries has increased significantly during COVID. And as consumers are getting used to watching a lot of how-to videos on YouTube, we're seeing a huge growth. And this is just an example of the beauty category. And this is what we call as jugaad, right? But this is happening across categories, right? How to make X recipe at home, how to do X stuff from a beauty category at home, how to, let's say, create a lot of DIY videos are seeing huge growth at home. So users have come online, but in a different sense, right? They are still sitting in the upper funnel, and we'll talk about what is the growth difference between the upper funnel and lower funnel in a later slide. But the idea over here is that with COVID and with a lot of changes in the environment around us, political, behavioral change, and then the technological change, a lot of users have access to tech. A lot of users are now more educated about how the online platforms work, and YouTube search and the kind of videos and the kind of search behavior that we see on YouTube has become the next big thing. And that is where I think the growth for a lot of D2C brands will come in from let's say in the next 2 to 3 years, as more and more new internet users from tier 3, tier 4 India come online. So just moving ahead, Paige. So like I mentioned, we already know that there's no longer a clear path. I think you've heard this since 2 p.m., right? That the path to purchase is non-linear, right? Instead, people are constantly jumping from exploration to evaluation stage before deciding on the product they want to buy, right? As a result, YouTube has evolved as a single entertainment destination to a prominent knowledge hub, because becoming aware of new products, A, consideration of new products, and B and C, taking action and purchasing of new products. All that is happening on YouTube, right? Now, if you see the numbers in front of you, 50% of shoppers say online video has helped them decide which specific brand or product to buy. 70% are talking about that YouTube viewers say that YouTube makes them more aware of new brands, right? So this is something that is there across categories, not just 1 or 2 categories. This is an aggregated research study that we've done with Ipsos and other research partners, right? And then 70% of YouTubers say that they bought a brand as a result of seeing it on YouTube. Maybe influencers, maybe the brand video, maybe a brand ad, but YouTube is driving purchase, and that is something that we're seeing more and more across categories. You can just move ahead. Great, thanks. So what we figured out, and what is that thing that we finally realized, that there's clearly there's no more a linear path to purchase across categories. Maybe one or two categories, but if you look at an aggregate picture of, let's say, the purchase behavior of a consumer, you will not see a linear category anymore. So you must have a marketing media plan where you're touching the customer at multiple parts of funnel, not just the lower funnel or not just the mid funnel. You need to expand and move up the funnel, right? People will constantly jump between exploration and evaluation. Let's say you're buying a car, you almost figure out a car, and then something else launches, or someone tells you, hey, what about this one? Or what about an EV car? You go back to the exploration phase. You start figuring out EV versus diesel cars, right? Then you come back over here, and then it's a whole new funnel altogether that, let's say, an IC engine car has to compete in now, because there's just so much information available out there, and YouTube sits at the center of it, right? So now I'll take an example of a beauty and fitness category. If you closely look over here, 20 times is the amount of upper funnel searches compared to lower funnel searches. The growth is actually, if you see the blue line talks about the how-to searches. The green line talks about the price searches, or what, like, price of a certain product in a beauty category. And this is in the beauty category, in beauty and the fitness category from a Google Trends standpoint. And if you see the red line is what actually is the lower funnel, which is just, if you look at an index kind of a scale, it's just 3 compared to the 65x, which is the blue line and the green line that they are operating at, right? So it's actually up to the brands, I would say, the D2C brands, that how much of share that you really are like hungry for. Are you okay to operate in that red line, that the 3 index that will get you some performance, that will get you some business, but once you start saturating it, you will have to start looking at the middle line, which is the consideration fit, where people are trying to understand that how much of where can we buy products online, or what is, let's say, a good alternative for this product, or what is the difference between certain products. Or if you're really hunger for the big upper funnel expansion, where the majority of the audiences are sitting in, where we see that a lot of brands don't venture in, but the brands that have ventured there, I think, and Tanveer and the rest of the team did take a few names in the last few sessions. They've seen growth. They've seen crazy amount of growth. And at Google also, we've seen growth across brands when brands move to upper and mid funnel. There's a science behind it as to how to go upper funnel without bleeding, how to move upper funnel with the right metrics to measure. But once we do it, once brands are able to inculcate the whole upper funnel strategy, that is when I think the magic happens. So we'll talk about that in the upcoming slides. So, and with all that we've seen, right, with the year-end search report, with whatever the folks have spoken in the last few sessions, with whatever we've seen from 2021, and with the kind of VC funding and the everything coming in from the Shark Tanks of the world, from a lot of focus on a lot of startups that are coming up, and a lot of categories are opening, right? We feel that 2022 is the right time to build a YouTube strategy to build eComm sales. And let's discuss about how we can do it together. So this is the motto that we go ahead with for the next upcoming slides. We will try to connect with our audiences at every stage of their purchase journey, not just action, not just mid-funnel, but across the funnel. And to do so, right, we'll have to look at the 3 bits. One is awareness, the other is consideration, the other is action, right? The 3 questions that we'll try to answer is that, how to drive direct e-commerce sales with YouTube, how to drive consideration and inspire action to enhance e-com sales, and then how to drive awareness about your brand, which leads to sale at a later stage, right? So brand equity becomes an important role in driving sale, because we just saw example of the beauty and fitness category, right? Brands operating in the upper funnel are actually creating their brand with an audiences that's 20 times the audiences that are sitting in the lower funnel. So it just becomes so much more important and imperative for us to create a brand equity, which will later drive to sales. But let's see how we can solve for that. Moving to awareness. Now, let's see how we can drive awareness and brand equity with YouTube, right? Now, I know this slide is a bit like there's a lot going on in the slide, but let me help you guys out with understanding it. The audiences that we need to reach out from an awareness standpoint, it's basically your upper funnel affinity audiences which have a passion about doing something, right? Let's say you're a D2C brand which operates in luxury beauty cosmetics for males and females both. Look at luxury audiences, right? Start reaching out to them with a creative that's relevant for them, that speaks to them in their language, right? And then start seeing that how does this audience behave in terms of metrics like unique reach, frequency, view through rates, ad lift, brand lift, awareness lifts, right? And then you start seeing that what is the qualification of this audiences over the period of 15, 30, 45, 60 days, right? If let's say today by spending an X amount, you reached out to, let's say, out of 10 million of your core audiences, which is sitting in the upper funnel, you reached out to, let's say, 3 million of those. What has been the funnel like after, let's say, 20 days? Out of that 3 million, what was the frequency, let's say, on the 3 million? And then how many net new users did you witness coming to your website? What did that lead to from, let's say, a checkout standpoint? What did that lead to, let's say from an add to cart standpoint? And all that is something that we can track on YouTube. And this is still on the number standpoint. But the bigger thing that we should start focusing on when we start looking at awareness also is the fact that how much are we growing our brand metrics? Now, Paige, if you can just move to the next slide. Because what we've seen, and this is a study that we've done with Nielsen MMM, that when we are focusing on brand as a D2C client, every $1 that you're putting in your brand ads will also lead to a $0.84 increment, will also yield you guys a $0.84, let's say, of revenue or profit later on. So that is the impact of brand today. So a lot of brands come to Google, come to Social Beat asking that, hey, we'll add, let's say we'll spend 10 lakhs today and let's see what happens after that, right? It's not that that 10 lakhs will result in sales today or tomorrow, but you have to look at a long-term kind of a window over here. You have to see what is the longing effect of investing in brand and the whole idea about creating a brand equity on YouTube and on digital channels, because as per our internal studies, it leads to 0.84% more, let's say, after the period of, let's say, a month or 2 or 3, but that depends on the category. But this is something that we've seen more and more in our internal studies. The other impact that we've seen YouTube have is that the impact on direct sales, right? Let's say if you're a brand that's doing YouTube regularly, let's say for the last 6 months or 12 months, and you compare your results to TV, and this is something that again we did a study across multiple CPG brands, we saw 2x performance increase in brand lift metrics, 2x increase in almost sales metrics, which led to a 68 to about 70% increase in your ROI, which was almost double of that which they got from linear TV programming. So that's almost a 2x increase, that impact that you're driving just because you were disciplined about investing in YouTube. And this is something that's been proven again and again. Awareness, guys, helps a lot in building brand equity to drive sales later. And that's one point. I think if there's one thing you'll take out from this whole presentation, start investing in awareness today. We don't know if there'll be another COVID coming in. We don't know if there'll be something else coming in later on. If your brand is strong, if you have a presence in the market, you can be rest assured that there'll always be a core audiences or a core market that will always be pro towards your brand, and that becomes the strong audiences that you can go after later when things settle, right? By focusing only on performance marketing or lower funnel, you're missing out on just so much, and you're just leaving yourself vulnerable in the market. That's one thing that I wanted to talk about on the awareness bit. Now, if you move to the consideration phase, which I think a lot of advertisers are doing really, really strongly over here, the audiences that and the consideration phase that we need to start reaching out to are basically people who are in the market. Let's say, again, you're the D2C brand working in, let's say, something for your home. There are people who are right now in market for buying products for their home. There are people who are in market for, let's say, renovating their home or buying a new home or just buying new furniture for their homes, right? That is the kind of marketing looked at from a consideration standpoint. The formats that you will be using here will be your consideration kind of formats, which is your in-streams of the world, which is your which are your video action campaigns of the world, which is your lead format for the world, right? Try to move the idea over here in the consideration set is to move people into consideration set for your brand, right? Not just like get them to consider the category, but also to consider your brand within the category, right? So if your creative over here in this set of the funnel needs to talk about the fact that looking to buy XXY, why don't you consider this brand, right? It needs to be contextual as to what the user's journey is, and that's where this phase becomes really, really strong and drives a lot of assisted conversions and a lot of view-through conversions over here. We've done it with the Social Beat team, for a lot of brands across Boat and multiple other brands, and we've seen this working like clockwork. You implement this, see the impact on view-through conversion, see the impact on assisted conversion, leverage Google's cross-channel report, leverage Google cross-path report, understand for how many conversions YouTube was in the path to purchase, because these are the users who are right on the fence. They'll either buy from you or not buy from you, but they will buy for the category. So it becomes that much more imperative for us to go after these audiences. And you can just move to the next slide, Sunil. And then this is something that we all have been doing. We all been doing really well, but action campaigns. Pick up your first party audiences and your marketing audiences. Go after them with a video action campaign. But don't just stop over there. Always and always, if you can move to the next slide, couple it with discovery campaigns. Now, the reason I say that is because when we've always coupled a video action campaign with discovery campaign, right? And then we've seen metrics around brand and performance. We've seen there's almost about 2 to 3 times of lift across metrics like favorability, consideration, and purchase intent, which is huge for brands that have been investing in brand or have been just investing in performance. These numbers are huge from an absolute standpoint. And what it just leads to is that it makes your YouTube strategy, it makes your overall performance marketing strategy that much more efficient, right? The one on the left is performance marketing. The one on the right is your video campaign. Both of them together, they drive efficiencies which are unheard of, right? So this is something that a lot of advertisers should start doing from, I think, today onwards. And one thing also that we've seen very recently is that we did a research internally, I think, and that what it said was 80% of the advertisers who've complemented display discovery with their YouTube campaigns, right? They saw CPA coming from YouTube campaigns, which was lower or similar to the original CPA from search, which is something that is groundbreaking, which is something that breaks the myth that YouTube can't drive conversions. YouTube and video can drive performance. It's just that there's a way to use it, and understanding that this has to be the creatives and the campaign timing needs to be impeccable. Without let's say a great creative strategy or a great without let's say a timing, by missing the bus, let's say on the user purchase journey, we might miss out on a lot of these efficiencies that I've spoken about. But I think if we plan ahead of time, and if you move to the next slide, Sunil, if we plan ahead of time, right? If we plan to let's say grab the attention of the consumer across the funnel, we can, I think, really drive a lot of more performance, a lot of more conversion than we are driving as of now from, let's say, from a sole lower funnel or a mid funnel approach standpoint. Now, this is a funnel, and if you're going full funnel, right, you can use this framework along to understand how you can incorporate video along with your search and shopping campaign. At the bottom in the blue, you'll find your always on activity, right? Which should take about 40 to 45% of your budget. This will include your search and shopping campaigns, and along with that, you put in your video action campaigns over here. This remains always on. Don't touch it. Your video action campaigns with the marketing audience and first party audiences will keep on growing and growing. And this is something that will continue to drive CPAs and conversion at the same or even lower CPA, let's say, compared to a search and shopping campaign. At the top in the yellow is awareness blast, which you keep on doing, let's say, on key dates. Let's say you do one in Jan, one in March, one in April, one in, let's say, July, one in around festive, right? And this should take about 15 to 20% of your total marketing budget. If you don't have budget for awareness, you should take out budget for awareness. But this is something that you should be doing. And every awareness blast should be at least for 4 weeks. And the frequency that we should be looking at in awareness blast should be about 5 to 6, because that's when we've seen a lot of brand moving really, really fast over there. And in the middle, it's really comes to the point that that what do we do in the middle? How do we support the bottom and the top with a campaign that really, really drives saliences and really drives the audiences and nurtures them? Where it comes in the TrueView in-stream or the video action campaign, but let's say to the in-market audiences, the audiences which are right on the fence. And this is the kind of campaign where you should spend, I think, the maximum of your budget. Again, this campaign could be 4 to 8 weeks long, but should be kind of like come out more sooner, right? It can be always on if you have the budget for it, but then try to make sure that you do more often of the mid-funnel campaigns, and you have to optimize it for light conversions, right? Start seeing when you launch a mid-funnel campaign. Let's say you started a campaign in market for, let's say, people are trying to buy a home, or people who are, let's say, in market for renovating their homes. How many people did add to cart? How many people, let's say, went to the checkout page, right? And the one thing that, if let's say you're being super risky and you like, let's just do it, let's just open all the guns and let's just go out in the market, omit all your converters and visitors from the yellow and the orange part. Make sure that your mid-funnel and upper funnel campaign only go after net new users. Don't let them go after the bottom funnel, right? Then you see that how many users are actually coming to the net new, how many net new add to carts happen because of our YouTube campaigns, how many net new checkouts have happened because of a YouTube campaigns, right? What is the impact that YouTube drove, let's say, from a net new user on product pages standpoint? Then you actually start understanding the funnel, right? You reach out to 3 million people in the yellow front, right? Let's say you reach out to 1 million people on the orange line. Then you start seeing that after reaching out to 3 million people, let's say, how many X 100,000 users came and did add to cart, right? Out of that, how many then ended up doing checkout? And then you do this across multiple type of audiences which is available in YouTube, and then you will figure out what is the audience that behaves the better from a sales funnel standpoint. And this funnel is something I think Sunil can also talk to you guys about, how we've made and orchestrated this funnel across multiple D2C brands. But this funnel, once you know, like, okay, these are the 10 type of audiences that work really, really well for me from a sales funnel standpoint. These are the audience that work really well for me from a brand funnel standpoint. Once you know this data, right? Once you have this data, it becomes as easy and plug and play when, let's say, you want to do your big blast or you want to scale up your performance campaign, because you've already figured out where have you made an awareness, who are your engagers, and who will convert with you. And then you just like go out with a framework and you start investing more in getting them back into the funnel piece. I hope, guys, this was useful. I'll stop over here and if there's any question or answers for me or for the whole YouTube performance or the whole YouTube channel, please shoot now. I'm more than happy to answer. Dave, if you have any, more than happy to take.
Yes, Ron, no, thank you. That was super insightful and very detailed slides. I think a lot of requests for those slides as well. One question, Ron, was on using programmatic like DV360 to run some of these awareness campaigns and the consideration campaigns which you mentioned, right? How have you seen that pan out? And I know we have done some of those together, but love to hear that.
See, it works brilliantly if a client is looking at, because see, DV360 GMP will help you in optimizing for frequency, right? And the more you're able to control frequency, the more you're able to drive a higher reach, right? If you can control your frequency across multiple platforms, that results in cost saving, which results in higher reach. So it's just not that you're saving money, it's also that you're increasing your overall reach. And DV360 also allows you to, let's say, go after inventory and the creatives which are not otherwise available via Google AdWords, right? So that's another added benefit of DV360. I've personally seen a lot of brands going the DV route, and that has certainly opened a lot of incremental reach. Let's say from let's say a net new add to cart or a net new product visit standpoint, but it also is a factor of what was the overall media mix of that client, right? How much were they only investing in YouTube, or are they also looking at multiple other platforms? And I think that is also a conversation we can have with a lot of brands once they're looking at DV360.
Thanks, Rohan. I think there's a question actually from all who are attending the had. But I think one of them wanted to understand that how can we actually measure the brand equity impact in a long-term way? Like, do you think there is a particular suggested time frame we should look at, like some specific number of days, months, or maybe take a time frame of a year?
Let me take this answer. Let me answer that in a very different manner. And thanks for the question. So I asked that. With YouTube, right? When you're measuring brand lift, you get a metric which is your controlled baseline positivity rate, which is, let's say, if people in a certain audiences didn't see your ad, what percentage of those people would have selected your brand? And that's a percentage, let's say, you can get today for your brand. If you, let's say, invest with YouTube, and if let's say start doing an advertising on YouTube, let's say it comes down to be 20%. What 20% says is that, let's say if in the core audience set, which is, let's say, 10 million or 1 million or 100 million, 20% of the audiences over there would select your brand even if they didn't see any ads. That talks about how strong your brand is with your audiences. And then by running YouTube, we do a test on the same audiences that, hey, okay, after showing all of these audiences a video, how much did that percentage, how much was the jump in that percentage of brand, right? What was the exposed control rate? Did it go up to 24%? Did it go up to 26%? Did it go up to 30%, right? And that is essentially what we call as brand lift. Now, Tej, to your question that, is there any number of months or weeks to it? There's no number of months or weeks to it, but you have to look at the fact that, am I controlling 30 to 40% of brand, right, in a category or not? Are 30 to 40% of people, let's say in a category, selecting my brand with or without me running ads or not? And because that is where we've seen a lot of brand leaders in the categories we operate at. You pick up the leaders in online meat delivery, you pick up the leaders in online beauty or in the online electronic space. All the leaders, their brand lifts and the brand salience is about a good number would be around 30 to 40%, but that's the number that you can run for. But it's essentially understanding where do you stand today from a brand lift metric standpoint, from a control positivity rate standpoint, and what is it that you have to do in order to, let's say, reach out to or move to, let's say, the 30% standpoint.
Understood. No, I think that's great, and I think does give us some clarity in a way to understand this brand lift. I think I had one question also, which I thought would be interesting for all of us to also understand. Like, you spoke very for the full funnel approach that we should follow on YouTube, like have a proper strategy for our awareness, consideration, and as well as conversions. And you spoke about how we customize communications on each and every funnel that we're working for. But now, Rohan, I think we just wanted to understand how you mentioned about COVID and the switch in people right now on digital, where they have started spending a lot of time on YouTube and consuming more of video formats. Have you also seen any kind of a shift in terms of the time frame or retention that was there on each of these funnels? Like maybe for a top funnel earlier, it would be maybe a 10-seconder could work. But maybe now, since people are consuming this content, they are inclined or they're having that attention span to maybe be there for a good 20-25 seconds. So is there a shift that you've seen?
I'll answer that question with the report from the Nielsen survey. Video viewers and video watching has become a habit along with seeing and working, right? Now, if this is a habit, people are bound to be on the platform. So we have brands which have taken the risk and gone with, let's say, 30-second, 60-second also in the upper funnel. And there have been cases where we've seen VTRs of about 30 to 40% coming in. So it's not that a good 30-60-second won't work. Again, it comes back to the point that how good is the creative? Is the creative hitting home with that audience? That, let's say you're reaching out to the luxury audiences, but your creative talks about how you're running a sale of, let's say, X percentage discount, and does not talk about the whole luxury aspect of your brand, it might not work, right? There are chances it might not work. But again, if you invest that much money into a creative, if you invest that much money into bringing out the picture, the luxury picture out of a brand, let's say you again then go after the luxury audiences, there are chances it might work. And how we spoke about the long-term effect on sales, it might just happen, right? And that is something that we'll always gun for. Yeah. So to your point, 15-10 seconders, not really. I would say now be bold, go after 30 seconders at least. Let's try look at those VTR metrics. They are bound to increase. With a lot of audiences coming online, I think it's safe to say that the more we go after, the more risk we take, the more returns we'll get from the platform. And with the knowledge that we team, you guys have, and with our YouTube in-house knowledge, I think we can figure out for a lot of brands that are present in the room that what is the core audiences where they can and will let's just spend the plethora of their budget so that they continue to see growth. Let's say, be it a 30-second or a 60-second. The idea is to optimize for views and then engagement on the websites.
Understood. No, I think that was great. I think, Rohan, because I think that's something we all have been seeing as that shift, because I think of COVID, we have been trying to understand how things work. But I really feel that I think this was a good insight that you shared with us in an overall approach of how to follow funnel, how to use that top funnel approach as well. I think that was really insightful from your end. I think, are there any other questions that the audience would like to ask? Anything that you would like
there are some. I think there's some questions on the chat. There's one about, can you please break down how we can remarket properly? See, remarketing by John, I think. So, see, remarketing basically, again, it's to understand when are you remarketing. Are you remarketing to a person who was in upper funnel, didn't come to mid funnel, didn't come to lower funnel? Then the remarketing is a bit different to that kind of a user, right? Remarketing to a video viewer will be different from remarketing to someone who's already converted. So even your remarketing strategy needs to have multiple creatives. Even your remarketing strategy needs to be across, let's say, be equipped with a communication strategy that talks to people in different funnel of remarketing. Your remarketing can also reach out to someone who just visited your website and then moved away, right? Why did they move away? Try to understand that and maybe come out with the comms on Discovery or YouTube to get them to get back on your website. Some people who move from add to cart or checkout, they were right on the fence and then they moved, right? Why did they move? Get them back. Like, totally a different communication channel is what is required over here. So remarketing also, I think, needs to be, it's a different science altogether. It needs to be understood as to what are the users that we are remarketing to. It's not 2014 or 15 where remarketing was just starting a display campaign and letting it run. Things have changed. Users have evolved. They are across the funnel, so probably, and that's why our marketing campaigns should be also across the funnel, I guess. There are some more questions over here, but do we have time for more questions?
I think maybe one last one, Rohan, we can take if you can maybe give us a minute here.
Let me see. Which one? I mean, there are a few questions over here. I
think a lot of people
one from John. I've taken one from Varun.
How to go for like a budget mix? Like, how do we have like a proper max out budget for YouTube ads? Like, what could be like a sales of percentage that we can expect from there? I think maybe that's one last question that we can take for today's session.
Okay. So, see, budget mix, as long as budget percentage distribution is concerned, that I've written over there. We also look at internally a 15% budget spent on your awareness stage, 45 on lower funnel and 40 on mid funnel. But let's say how much is too much on YouTube or how much is too less on YouTube? To understand that, we need to figure out that are we reaching out to the core audiences or not? And if we are reaching out to our core audiences, if they are coming onto our website, and if we are still able to spend the budget that we've allocated to our core audiences, then why are we stopping them over there, right? Why don't we increase the budget to a level that we saturate that audiences? Have we reached out to 30 to 40% of the audiences that are in our core set out there in the YouTube universe? If we've not reached out, I would say you're not spending enough, because your core audiences will always be small but highly engaged with your brand, right? And I think that is where, as a brand, you need to start tapping out audiences. Create like a funnel of core audiences, core plus one, core plus two. Your core audience is where you go after 30% of the universe that's outside at a frequency of 6+. Once you attain that, figure out the next core plus one audiences, where let's say you can reach out to 20% of the overall universe out there, or 15% of the universe out there, with let's say a frequency of 4 or 3. But don't look at spending all your budget over there, because this is where you can also spend a lot and not drive a lot of performance. It's actually a core audience, like I said, where you should not even think about budget. You should start thinking about, and have I reached out to 30 to 40% of my core audiences? And if not, how can I reach out? What is the time frame I need to reach out to 30 to 40% of that core audiences at a 5 or a 6+ frequency? Because that is when we've seen internally is that the brand metrics start moving, and a lot of performance metrics also start moving over there. So budget will depend on, I mean, if you reach out to 10% or 5% of your core audiences, then you might as well not do it, because that 2 or 5% incremental might not drive a lot of sales, and it'll just come back to you as a brand manager and as a brand marketer that maybe this is something I should not have done, or maybe you would have this myth in your mind or the doubt in your mind that maybe YouTube didn't work, right? But it's not that. It's just that there's so much noise out there. There's so many brands competing for the same user. A good 20 to 30% reach with a 5 or 6+ frequency is something that really makes it work for brands out there, and a lot of D2C brands now.
Understood. I think that was one of the secret sauces you got from Rohan today from this session, in terms of understanding how to measure the right impact also from YouTube. But I think, Rohan, we really wanted to thank you, the whole Social Beat team really wanted to thank you for this session, and always your constant support that we keep getting from you on a day-to-day basis. And really thank you for taking out the time for this session today.
Not a problem.
And we look forward to having you again for the next sessions as well.
Sure. It's always a pleasure.
I think interesting insight on sleep, work, and videos now, Rohan. So thanks for that.
Yeah.